So I just had my first ever meeting with the Grand Master.
Oh, did you?
Cassandra said come and join him for a drink in the hotel there.
Sandra's a good egg. He brings you into things. Yes, he's very generous in that regard. So we're actually staying in that part of our group is staying in that hotel as well.
Lucky you.
Typically, well, most of us are here or the Panorama, but we had such a large pilgrimage this year, we've spilled over into some of the other hotels. So this one here, the Angleterre, has been renovated because there was a fire there some years ago. We used to.
I remember that because we were here during the fire.
Yes. We used to house the entire pilgrimage in the Angleterre, and then also the Royale right next to it. When I came for the first time in 1992, that's where I stayed, was in the Royale. Tiny little room. And in those days, if someone got sick, you would go make house calls in these old end of century, fin de siècle, is that the proper term?
This is a very famous building, apparently.
Yes, it is.
What about your Malard? How do you? I mean, obviously the aeroplane, but do you have to have a specially adapted plane?
No, because we usually don't take people who are that physically disabled. We won't take people who require stretchers. We do have a patient who is he's not quite tetraplegic, but almost. He's partially tetraplegic.
You guys keep going. I'm going to grab the Zoom.
That's fine. You won't. I hope this won't bother you, but I think maybe this is the perfect venue for the two of us to let Peter have his things, and it's good. So anyway,
are you making a little documentary or something?
He's been doing this sort of for the last few years.
It gives people who watch it a good feel, I suppose, for what goes on.
I hope so. I think we don't have any control over the editing and the rest, but his work is quite tasteful, and so I think it's fun. I think it's part of his personal avocation and ministry to help out in that way. At any rate, we tend not to bring people who are very sick.
In July, we bring people who are getting people onto the plane in July. We take about 50 sick people, but they need, loading the plane takes forever because probably half of those people need to be sort of hoisted onto the aeroplane. We do take people who are tetraplegic, and we do have people. We have one or two tetraplegic people who are also sort of minimally responsive that you can't actually communicate with them at all.
How many Malans do you have?
50.
That's how well we have. The pilgrimage was 400 people, but I think that your pilgrimage is probably a lot smaller, isn't it?
250 helpers, 50 Malans. That's July. This time round, though, it's a lot more straightforward.
Peter, you need an assistant.
Yeah.
My son is my assistant, but I'm having him eat lunch right now.
There's a company in England who organises these things called Tangney Tours. So John Tangney, you often see here, he lives in London. But so he charters the plane.
And where do you put the Malard?
In July, we stay in Saint-Fré. But in May, we stay in the other one. The big one. On the other side.
That's the Accueil Bernadette.
Bernadette.
Right. I remember visiting you up there many, many years ago. I think Susan Weir was your head nurse.
Oh yeah.
She still travel with your pilgrimage?
There's someone called Nick Weir who's a doctor. Is that
Otolaryngologist?
Yeah.
That's his wife, I believe.
Okay. I can tell you if she's here.
I don't know if she's
He's here. Neil's here. She's not.
She's not this year, but she used to be the head nurse. And I remember one year I had stayed after the pilgrimage. It was 1996, I think. They invited me for tea, so I went and took some flowers for them. And I think that was worth 10 years of good graces with the British pilgrimage after that. That worked out very nicely. So we have gotten away from taking people who are too sick.
You were telling me that you had a bad problem on day one.
Here, our airplane was grounded. We had a 24-hour layover in Melbourne. Not the most beautiful city, but a city of historic importance for the Catholic Church in the States. After having been already on the plane for 4 hours. So we didn't get off the plane until about 12:30 or 1 o'clock. It was painful.
3 o'clock in the morning.
We were an hour late boarding. We were supposed to start boarding at 6:30 and depart at 7:30. 7:30 we're still boarding. At 8:30 they pull out of the dock and they announce that there's fault signal coming from some of the rear wing controllers, the electric panels. It had rained extremely hard. There had been flooding in Baltimore. There were torrential rains for 24 hours. So probably there was condensation and moisture. And they couldn't overcome the faults. They couldn't. They worked on it for several hours while we sat there. Finally, they got everyone. At 1:30 in the morning, they're unloading us from the airplane, putting on these little shuttle buses, taking us back into Baltimore, the Lord Baltimore Hotel.
Lord Baltimore. Commercial flight.
No, it was a charter. It was Thomas Cook, actually, because what happened was our commercial carrier, which was North American Airlines, found themselves in bankruptcy 4 weeks before our pilgrimage was scheduled to depart.
Your pilgrimage has been cursed by disaster.
Well, not yet. Not yet, but it's not over yet. So,
Will the insurance pay for everyone to stay in the hotel?
well, Thomas Cook did, because that's their responsibility. So it turned out all right. In fact, our pilgrimage began with the getting off that, and the bonding begins, and the support for the Malad begins, and the sort of unexpected transformation of pilgrimage starts to take place. We get to the Lord Baltimore Hotel, and about 4 in the morning, people finally get into their rooms. So you can imagine the next day how people felt. Mid-morning, we managed to get to the Basilica of the Assumption, which is the first cathedral in the United States, and at one time was the only archdiocese for the entire colonial area, and for the original 13 colonies. And so we had our service of anointing take place right there. And then after that, they flew up a new electrical panel from Philadelphia and a technician from Orlando. They spent all day working on it, and in the evening we got on board. And we pulled out of the dock at 7:30, and they uncorked the champagne, and we were off.
This is our ultimate nightmare that this would happen in July, because getting everyone onto the plane takes so long. If something went wrong with the plane, I think I don't know if we do. Isn't New Orleans Cathedral very old?
Yes, the St. Louis Cathedral. Yes, we have several members from New Orleans here, and from Louisiana in general, because we have it's Lafayette, is that right? Is that where Paul and Marla Davis, they're from Lafayette, I think. Right, so he's the hospitaller there in Lafayette for New Orleans, and they were quite involved in Katrina rebuilding.
I was at a conference in New Orleans, and I was going to Mass. It was on a weekday in the cathedral.
Yes.
And there weren't that many people there, and the priest in charge said, I'd like to welcome everyone here this morning. I'd like to welcome all those joining us by internet. I'd like to welcome those in their nursing homes. I'd like to welcome all those in prison. Right.
Welcome to America. You don't have this in London.
I thought, maybe there are 20 people in the church. Maybe there are sort of 2,000 inmates watching.
It's like C-SPAN when the members of Congress stand up to speak. You think there's a huge audience, but when the camera is panned, there's like one person sitting there. Everything is being broadcast by closed-circuit television, and that's it. So this is your first pilgrimage.
My first pilgrimage.
With the order, first May pilgrimage, and this is my 17th. So between the two of us, we have a range of experiences.
It's my first time wearing this boiler suit.
Yes.
Belts. Right?
Yes, we got a British belt too here. We did this the previous year.
I like these.
Much better than the one we have. Yes.
But you're not wearing a boiler suit.
No, they converted us. They told us that we had to wear black tunics now. We used to wear these sort of green suits like that, but they were green and quite unattractive.
I think for the fuller-figured man, this doesn't do very much. With a belt like
the belt's really, yes, I know. Well, braces are good for supporting things.
How many doctors do you bring?
We have so many we can't count them. But we don't provide service in the same way that you do. So in your pilgrimage, for example, you'll quarter your sick in one of the equies, and then you have stages of your doctors and nurses, where you actually take care of them there in the hospice. Whereas we tend to quarter our malads in the hotels with us. And each of them bring a companion or sometimes family members with them. Are you all right, Peter?
Great. There's so much
That's all right, yes.
but
You need lavaliers is what you need.
I have that too.
Is this the sort of thing you want to record?
Well, it's actually bits of it are quite good, like the number of doctors.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that people would find that interesting.
Are you making like a documentary?
Why people come on this boat.
advanced selfie, I think is what it is. I don't know, have you had people now taking photographs of each other with their cell phones? You're about to show me some?
I took a selfie the other day.
Did you really?
Having not ever done it really before, because I was trying to explain to my mother what the uniform looked like, and it's kind of difficult to explain.
Oh yeah, you got
So I took.
Perfect. You did that in a hallway mirror or something like that? That is great.
So I
Looks like you're scaring yourself.
I just thought.
Now everyone is a filmmaker. We have everyone's got equipment, and we get everybody on camera. So yes, we don't really quarter our sick. We've had those conversations because our pilgrimage has expanded over the years. When I first came in 1992, maybe we had 12 to 14 malad, and we had a whole pilgrimage of probably no more than 70 people.
Does that mean that you don't have anyone any space in the
Not that many. And in fact, if we cannot provide care for our malads within the hotel room, we will not bring them. We've had those experiences, either people who are very overweight or extremely disabled and need to
Do all three American associations follow the same procedure?
No, I think the American, here's the Western Association right here passing in review. The American from New York, they tend to bring the sickest patients, and they would bring people who are something. They brought a patient with what we call amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, ALS. Do you have the same term?
Yeah, we say motor neuron disease.
Motor neuron disease, right.
I thought you called it von Gehrer disease or something.
Lou Gehrig. He was a famous baseball player who had the disease and died of it.
I actually had a colleague.
You've enrolled Renee as an assistant. Is that
No, I'm going to give him my chair.
it? Is he union? You know, if you do that in Hollywood, they'll ground you. They'll bring your show to a halt. I'm sorry. I hope this isn't terribly painful for you.
Oh, it's always nice to see you.
Oh, good. Very good.
So, this is great. Why don't we pick up here and talk about some of the medical side,
All right. Well, we can do that.
and a little bit maybe about the committee that reviews.
We can do that. We can do that. We're both fairly new members, so we may not be the best people to ask, but I think we could speak about it a little bit.
Just have a conversation.
We were talking about where and how our malads are quartered, and I think our pilgrimage in general has been different than the European pilgrimages because of that. So we tend to quarter our sick with us in the hotels, and we live with them.
So, I mean, we obviously use the hospitals. The advantage of that means that we're patients who need to be hoisted in and out of bed. We can do. It does slightly break the pilgrimage up in the sense that the helpers are all sleeping in one place and all the guests are sleeping in another place. So perhaps we lose a little bit of the unity, but we try hard to overcome that. And then at night time, for example, last night, 5 or 6 of us spend the night in the hospital, and everyone else is.
Well, and from a doctor's perspective, being in the hospital is sort of a natural place to be.
Yeah,
And so
you feel
it's
safe. There's all the equipment there.
You do, and I think there's a sort of intense bonding that other people don't get. Here, we're sort of out of context, and so we're sort of the doctors in the world, if you will. We don't have quite the same hospital context, but it does give us a different perspective on what medicine can be in the world. It's not just about hospital medicine.
Yeah.
You're sort of always a doctor wherever you are. Just as
I suppose from my point of view, with these two issues, continence issues and feeding issues,
That's a different story.
are much easier dealt with in sort of premises which are, wipe clean floors, no carpets,
Right.
clinical facility. So when we have a large number of people who do have issues with continence and do have issues with feeding, sicker guests, in other words, it is easier to look after them in that sort of context.
In our case, if we have patients who have that much trouble with either of those, we may not bring them. But we have brought patients who have needed special feedings, either tube feedings, pureed feedings, bottle feedings, things of that sort. Some degrees of continence and personal hygiene are present in many of our sick, but they're not overwhelming, and so we manage. And even patients who would require external drains or catheters, we can still manage.
That's right.
Yeah.
When is the next meeting of Camille?
The meal will be in October. I think it's the 17th and 18th this year.
Do you remember there was all that discussion about whether it would be in Paris or Lourdes? And
Yes, I do, and I think the decision was to have it at Lourdes sort of permanently, and so we probably joined just at the wrong time because we're going to miss we're going to miss the opportunity to shop for our families in Paris. But I think this is the natural home of that committee. It sort of belongs here, and I think there's a spiritual atmosphere which endures throughout the year. I've been here off season, I know you have as well. And so it's a very special time to have that kind of meeting.
no, I thought, as a decision, I thought it made sense.
I agree.
I love the meetings with the Bishop of Lourdes, the dinner with the Bishop of Lourdes. I thought he's a very impressive man.
Yes.
Great command of languages. He's sort of young, dynamic, enthusiastic, and I thought he gave very good leadership.
He does, and of course Sandro sort of creates the wonderland atmosphere that he's so good at. So it's a very festive atmosphere and a very happy atmosphere. It's very different than a typical medical meeting.
The other thing I found very impressive was from the French point of view, the French doctors who were there, I thought were incredibly high-powered.
Yes.
Was it Jean-Bernard Michel?
That's correct.
Isn't he president of the French Medical Association or something?
The Académie Française Médicale, something like that. I don't know the exact term. Do you know, René, is it the Académie Française?
He has two things, isn't he? Because he's basically the senior doctor in France. I mean, not just Catholic. He's a senior doctor in France, and also he's in the as a poet or philosopher or something. He's in one of the Académie Française. He's in the Académie Française, but not as a scientist. He's in the Académie Française as a sort of philosopher and poet. So he's a very impressive man.
Well, that's the perfect combination for this committee, isn't it? To have the technical knowledge and the poetic heart, to be able to appreciate some of the humanistic qualities of life as well as the scientific basis of it.
There were two neurologists there who are, I think, very respected in the field. And they were talking about a third one who just died. And, very eminent, very impressive.
So it's a gathering.
Of course, yourself, another very eminent.
So it's a gathering of intellectual heavyweights, which I think one wants for this kind of a conversation. Because if you're going to start talking about unexplained healings, you better have a clear idea of what explained healings look like. And a conversation that we had earlier this morning, as we were at the mass of the parish church up at the top of the hill, was what these conversations are like. And for both of us, last year was our first time, so I don't think we have the long-standing experience of the committee. But in general, one of the things that came out for me from the last meeting was that a declaration of healing has a certain gravity to it, a certain seriousness, and that the person who presents with a declaration of healing has this striking quality to the experience and a certain kind of humility associated with it as well. And because the group is so large and many of us we're sufficiently experienced as clinicians, and I think we have a broader perspective than just our clinical medicine. These stories sort of circulate around the committee. You can kind of feel it. There's an intangible quality of recognition of the value or the potential of these stories as really having weight for these kinds of healings.
And also the fact that it's a sort of technical medical decision. I didn't fully appreciate that. The decision that something's miraculous is a decision made by a bishop.
That's exactly right.
That the committee's advisory role is to say that this is medically inexplicable. So I thought that was very important. And I think, without any disrespect to anyone who reports themselves as having been killed, there's a sort of sensible skepticism about some, so it's not a committee of incredibly credulous people who, want to rubber stamp things. It is a proper scientific committee.
Exactly. They're very serious about it, and they recognize the implications of any kind of a recognition of a declaration. Many people come here, and Lourdes has its legend because of its very few recognized miraculous healings. But even those few should not be downplayed because they have their meaning for the world. It is this legend, this mysterious legend of this particular place right now, where the Order of Malta and the Lourdes tradition intersect, both under the protection of Our Lady in different forms. And that's probably how it's meant to be at this time of history. But there is this mystery of this place, and I believe that mystery is part of why people come here.
Yeah.
And for some people, that is very important. That gives hope, and I think it's a realistic hope. So I think our committee provides an important service for the world, and I think the people who are members of it take that service very seriously.
I mean, just coming back to the pilgrimage side of things, for anyone I've ever met who's sick, who wants to come to Lourdes, usually the first question everyone says to them is, "Oh, do you think you're going to be healed?" And I think people find that a challenging question because at some level they do want healing.
Yes.
But at another level, they don't want people to think, oh, they're only just going to Lourdes because they want to be miraculously healed, and if they're not miraculously healed, then it's been a waste of time. People come on a pilgrimage, they come to renew their faith. But often people do take away from it, I think, a sense of peace and things like that, which can be a form of healing. Although, as you say, once or twice, occasionally, every year, dramatic things do happen, and we have to be accepting of that.
Well, there are certainly blessings that take place here in many expected and unexpected ways. I've thought of it often. I mean, just consider each of our Malads received these small decorations from the order, from the Grand Master, maybe not personally, but at least from the Grand Master. Each of the companions receives a decoration. Those of us who have come for various times, you have the red medal of the order, for example, as a first-time pilgrim. I have a number of clusters on mine as a many-time pilgrim, but each one receives something by hand, at least as a symbol of a gift. So there's something tangible and durable that remains, a little glow of Lourdes. And of course there are the bigger gifts, which are the unexpected gifts that happen as people interact here, either in service or the receipt of blessings and care from others. So those things are very important.
I remember we had a priest who came to Lourdes with multiple sclerosis in a wheelchair. He came back from Lourdes, also in a wheelchair, and his carer said to him, how did you get on in Lourdes? He said, well, I've been cured. And she said, I can't help noticing, Father, you're still in a wheelchair. And he said, I'm not angry about it anymore. And, I think those are the things that I personally have experienced most. It's a response to their time in the pilgrimage.
Well, perhaps people get what they need here, even though they may not know what that is, but they may find it here in one way or another. So, and this kind of endless well, bottomless well of gifts and blessings is here, and we return for it again and again. As you know from your own experience, there are many people on your pilgrimage who are regulars. They come, they can't imagine not coming again.
Anyway, enjoy the rest of your...
It's a pleasure to see you here. Thank you so much for coming over and seeing us.
Nice to meet you as well.
Mention good luck and God
I
bless.
hope that's gone well for you. If you post